Peace and Black Power families. Brother Agyei Tyehimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach Black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up. Thank you for joining us. Please, in this preliminary part of the program, maybe take a minute or two and share the link, share this video, like and subscribe to the channel. Support us so we can support you. And that should be something we do instinctively. Support those who support us. Fight for those who fight for us. Well, family, hope you had a happy holiday season. Whether you celebrate Christmas or Kwanzaa, New Year's, it doesn't matter to me. When we have opportunities to come together with our family and to build and to love on each other, to pour into each other, that's a beautiful thing. And so I hope you enjoyed the holiday season. I hope that we take that Nguzo Saba, those 7 principles, and we practice them daily. If we did that, we would see a lot of progressive change in our community, our families, and our organizations. I'm sure you would agree with that. Let me start with a few introductory comments. The Queen Brenda in the building is just letting you know, stay informed, subscribe, share your content or our content with your friends and family. She's thanking you in advice. She also welcomes you to the Harlem Liberation School broadcast, and we appreciate your positive, keyword, positive participations. We don't tolerate any foolishness here, family, but we do tolerate Black love. All right. That said, let's get down to the nitty gritty. Today, we're talking about the topic that Black resistance, first and foremost. And what we're saying very pointedly is that Black resistance doesn't occur in one way. We really got to understand this, fam. This is political education. Political education is to help prevent us from making missteps, from doing things that our people may have done incorrectly in the past, so we don't keep repeating that loop of intergenerational political trauma, right? That we break those chains, right? So we have to learn that there's more than one way to participate in Black liberation movement. There's more than one way to participate in Black resistance. And not only that, Black resistance can occur on several battlefields, right? Some people think, oh, you can only resist in this type of place. No, you can resist anywhere you are. So we're going to get into it, family. I want to just remind everybody that Harlem Liberation School is a Black political education center. We are not a school in the sense that we got little kids and teachers and promotions and graduations. It's not that type of school. As a liberation school, we're a Black political education center. We started in 2016. We saw that after going to these panel discussions and community events, our people didn't seem to have the basic foundational knowledge that we kind of need to mount a successful Black liberation movement and to build our own nation. So that's why we started. Our mission is to help our people wake up, clean up, and stand up. That's why we're here. That's what we do. Every video we do, somehow, some way, relates to that mission. Now, what's resistance? Let's start there. As you see on your screen, I want to make sure everybody can follow. Resistance is the refusal to accept or comply with something. It's an attempt to prevent something by an action or by an argument, theoretically, right? When we talk about Black resistance, it's the same thing. We're talking about, in more of a political sense, it's when we refuse to comply, let's say, with societal laws. We refuse to accept societal narratives. We refuse to move the way they want us to move. We refuse to condemn the people that they, in our community, that they label the villains, that we label heroes and sheroes, right? That's all of those different types of resistance. And it's very important because the Creator made us all differently, family, and gave us all gifts. And for our liberation movement to be successful, we have to appreciate, to identify the different gifts we have and be able to appreciate them. And in order to keep this Black liberation movement going, we must be able to stop the demoralizing of people. We have to be able to bring people into the movement, family. And one key way you bring people into the movement is to demonstrate that you see them, that you recognize them, that you see them as important to the movement. So this means we can't go around saying the only way you could be in our movement is if you read every book on Malcolm X. You're not going to have too much of a liberation movement if that's your criteria, because a whole lot of people are not doing that. Or if you don't know how to build a house from scratch, or you don't know anything about military or warfare. No, family, we got to bring people in. And we got people in every type of profession, industry, skill set, knowledge base you can think of. One thing we're doing, we're making the mistake of casting people out if they're not great public speakers, if they haven't written X amount of books, if they don't speak X amount of African languages or wear a certain type of African clothing, if they're not socialist enough for us, if they're not nationalist enough, if they're not Pan-Africanist enough, we cast them away, and that is a mistake. Big mistake. Our people come in all types of contexts and textures and shapes and colors and sizes and political ideologies, right? So one of the things I think is important to do is, first of all, we define resistance and Black resistance. Now, let's talk about different types of resistance. And without making this like an inexhaustible presentation, I want to use the context of the enslavement of our ancestors. Our ancestors enslaved a few centuries back never enjoyed their enslavement. They hated it. And particularly the first generation that was snatched out of the motherland and brought to another land to be enslaved by mostly British people. They hated it, being disconnected from their culture and their family. And in every historical era, Black people fought back, family. Sometimes we didn't have weapons of warfare to fight back, so we fought back by going to court in the Civil Rights Movement and by protest in all these different ways. If you look at what happened in these slave plantations, you'll get a good idea of what I'm talking about. Let's think about it. Many of our people who were enslaved actually decided their way of resisting their enslavement was to run away, to pack up and bounce, right? So we know about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. But think about it. That's an act of resistance because white slaveholders designated our people as property. If you were enslaved, that meant you were the quote-unquote property of some white person. That meant that if you ran away, legally in their eyes, you were stealing their property. That's crazy. So that's a form of resistance. You're failing to comply with their definitions, their standards. You're failing to accept your status as a less than a human being, or you're refusing to let your labor be exploited or to be sexually exploited. So running away was a key form of slave resistance. And that's the one that we read about in all the books, right? But guess what? That wasn't the only form of slave resistance, family. We also did things like broke tools. Yeah, we broke tools as a way of saying we don't want to do this work. We also, family, participated in violent and bloody revolts and rebellions using actual violence. Some people weren't built for that, family. That didn't mean they didn't resist. They just didn't resist in that way. So some people were scared to run away. Some people weren't really built for the armed insurrection, so they broke tools. Some people participated in work slowdowns today, in this day and time. Union organizers and union workers participate in work slowdowns. In other words, they deliberately produce a very small amount of this product or this type of labor expected of them. So enslaved Africans would deliberately produce far less cotton, let's say, pick far less cotton or tobacco leaves or what have you, than they were supposed to under law. A work slowdown. It's a form of resistance. They're failing to comply. They're fighting back in different ways. And not only that, some people killed themselves, family. This is a matter of record. Some Africans killed themselves rather than continue to be part of the slave franchise, and taking it even further, some people even killed their own children and babies. We call this infanticide. The book Beloved, written by Toni Morrison, has a character in it that comes from a real character. I think her name was Margaret Garner, who killed her own children rather than allow them to grow up and be enslaved. And I know we look at that and say, that's crazy. But I'm not going to stand here in judgment. I've never been enslaved in that way. People do things, are led to do things by the situation that they're in. And that's another form of slave resistance. Some people burned down the master's property, family, broke their tools, burned their houses down, and slave quarters down. Some people peeled off, depending on where they live, particularly in places like South Carolina and Georgia along the coast, where there was Florida, where there was some swampland. They peeled off to those areas, secret places, and they created their own independent societies. Some of them are referred to as maroon societies, and they lived on their own for a long time. Some of us, whether we know it or not, are descendants of the maroons, the people who said, we're not running away to a so-called free territory. We're going to create our own independent society. We're going to peel off from here. We're going to steal supplies from this plantation. We're going to form relationships with our people who are still formerly enslaved, but we're going to have our own independent societies here. And those independent societies, they practice to the best of their ability their own spiritual beliefs. They try to speak what they knew or remembered of their own languages, and they practice their own customs. So I'm saying all this to say simply that if you look at the context of our enslavement, there were various forms of slave resistance. Now, if we can understand that, then we should be able to understand that the same holds true today. And again, this is important because I don't want us to go forth in life with this very narrow thinking that there's one way to fight back. There's one role we can play in the Black liberation movement. There's one type of person needed in the Black liberation movement. There's one geographic area that's important in the Black liberation. All of this, these are false teachings, and to the best of our ability, we should stop teaching those things because they're getting in the way of our ability to organize on mass and local levels effectively. I'm going to stop at this point, look at some of our comments, then I'm going to continue. See what we got. We got that Rising Phoenix is in the building, watching in full. Okay, very good. What else we got? People in Rising Phoenix says people in 2025 don't understand their last names come from those people that enslaved us. That's right. That's right. You better believe it. And that's why I got rid of them slave names back in 1991. That's right. And again, and even that's a form of resistance. You see, this is what I'm trying. That's cultural resistance. You're saying I'm not wearing your labels and your names. Did all Black people do that? No. We resist in different ways, and I want to make sure when people leave this that they can appreciate that there are different ways we participate in Black resistance, and we should be able to appreciate all of them. We don't have to adopt all of them. The form of resistance you adopt and utilize is your choice, but you should know that we have a full menu of things you can do to participate in Black resistance. I want to use just a few examples from my life to make it personal, a form of storytelling, if you will. So in middle school, I went to Catholic school, and in high school, I went to a Catholic school. 2 different schools. And in high school, they had a thing. You had to do a certain type of prayer, certain type of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and the Pledge of Allegiance, and all this stuff, right? So by high school, I was like, I'm not participating in that stuff. They wanted you to call most of our teachers, with the exception of a few people, were actual pastors or Catholic priests. They have the collars right here, the white part here, and the collars. And their title or designation was Father so and so. So I got to a place I'm not calling these white people my father, man. I'm not doing that. Nobody told me. I didn't read it in no book. I'm not doing that. I'm not calling them that. That was a form of resistance. And let me tell you, it was effective too, because I would say Mr. So-and-so instead of father. So, no, you call me father. I said, I'm not calling you father. The only person I'm calling my father is my father. Hello? It wasn't rude, wasn't disrespectful, didn't raise my voice. Just said, I'm not doing that. But I am showing you respect by saying Mr., right? And that was a big deal. Tried to give me attention, got in trouble, and it called home, and my father had to come. Okay, that's an act of resistance, family. That's saying I don't recognize your title, and I'm certainly not going to comply with this notion of giving you that type of respect and honor. No, I'm not doing that. Another time in high school, this is where I had my first acts of resistance occurred in school. Then another time, I stopped refusing to pledge allegiance to the flag. So what I would do, I would stand up with the rest of the class, but I'd have my arms down and my hands folded and look straight ahead. And when they done, I wouldn't say a word. And once they was done, I would sit right back down. Well, of course, my classmates noticed it, and the teachers noticed it. They didn't like that, and they tried to give me detention and get in trouble for that. My father had to come and again, it's like I have a right to say I'm not going to do that. I'm not pledging allegiance to this flag. No, sir. Not of what I know about what people have done to my people in the name of that flag. What this country has done to other people that look like me or share my history in the name of that flag. Imperialism and colonialism and slavery and exploitation and human trafficking and all. Now, I'm not doing that. I'm not saluting that flag, and I have the right not to do that. After all, my parents paid for me to come here. I'm not a Catholic. I don't subscribe to that religion. I'm going here for the education, and that's it. So that was a problem. Got in trouble, and they were trying to. Oh man, my father had to come in. My father was who taught me, so he was like, we paid tuition. He doesn't have to. There's nowhere we saw where he has to pledge allegiance. He has to go to these religious ceremonies. They want me to go to these things in the school. I mean, so these are all forms of resistance, family. As I got older, we participated in more militant resistance in college. Now we're taking over the university. We're holding white administrators hostage. We're blocking streets so traffic can't go by, right? The newspaper, the school's newspaper for students is allowing racist students and organizations to write their articles and spew their racist ideas. And every time we're trying to write articles in the paper, they're denying us that opportunity. So, of course, we had our own paper, The Black Voice, which I was the editor of. But sometimes we wanted to get our message in the larger white student newspaper. After all, we all paid a student fee that helped to finance that paper, and that paper reached every student. So one day we got tired of that, of them not including our articles, our op-ed pieces. And we came there and took over the office and said, listen, this is how this is going to go. We're going to start doing some things to this office and to you. If we don't start seeing some black people and black professors and black community members articles in this paper, because our funds help support this paper. So if our articles ain't in, nobody's articles it won't be no newspaper. That's how we had to bring it to them. Now that's a form of resistance that's a lot more what? Militant and aggressive and assertive, right? And then we started doing little boycotts and a whole bunch of stuff, different forms of resistance. When I got out of school, I learned that years later, I learned that my newborn baby girl was going to come be born, and I was elated. I said, I don't want her to be born with no slave name. I wanted to change my name for years. I said, you know what? I'm going to change my names. I'm going to do it legally. So then I'm running around with this African name, but when I'm signing checks, it's some white name. I'm changing my name so the name I sign on checks, the names I do business with, will be my name, right? And will be my children's name. So in about 1991, I changed my name to Agyei Tyehimba. Agyei, messenger from God. Ajamo, he fights for what he wants. Tyehimba, we stand as a nation. And one of the proudest moments of my life, two of them, was cutting the umbilical cord of my children, bringing them into the world, and in ancient Ghanaian tradition, whispering in their ear, welcome, my child. You are priceless, and your name is Nubia Folami Tyehimba, huh? And breaking down what their names meant in their ear upon their birth. That's resistance, family, because what they want us to do is be attached to their customs, their norms, their holidays, their definitions, their priorities. So all of those I gave you historically what has happened in our general history, but I'm telling you now from my own life how I participated in resistance struggles. And now notice some of the resistance struggle was in high school. Some were in college. Some were in the larger community. We would go in the community. Back then, we looked like X-Clan. We had locks, and we had our African clothes garb on, and we'd be walking with our speaker. You know how the brothers had the speakers on a dolly, and they playing music. We did that. And we would get people, so we'd park up in a project. We park up, somebody would let us plug into their house outlet, and we'd be playing music to get people's attention to come out. And once people came out, we'd be holding rallies, family. That's how we was moving back then. On the spot. You know how they say pop-up stores today? We had pop-up rallies. We would pop right up in your project area with the music, get you out, and then we start talking about different things. So those were acts of resistance. Speaking truth to power. Political rallies. Reframing how people see things. Helping challenging people's possible slave mentality. Helping people to wake up, and to join our movement and to come to our meetings and be part of our movement. That's political resistance, right? There were things we did, for instance, in the larger community. Now, I'm not a student, years later. And we organized Black and Latino parents to challenge the local public school systems. We taught them how to evaluate whether a school was efficient or not. We taught them how to run a press conference. We taught them how to speak in public. We taught them how to frame questions that were very sharp and pointed, and how to address those questions to the people in power. And guess what? At least 3 schools in the Bronx, we got those principles removed. We deemed those schools inadequate to teach our kids. And we forced all of those schools and the Board of Ed to allocate more resources in the form of money and faculty to those schools, so that the kids in those schools, those Black and brown students, would get the type of education that they deserve, the educational opportunity they deserve. Years later, we did the same. We went to we had a school in the Bronx, and the white principal, this white lady, is telling the teachers they can't teach Black history Right now, here this woman is sitting in a school that's in the South Bronx, family. This is the undisputed birthplace of hip hop, for sure. Right? This is a place that was full of black and to some degree brown activism and like a kind of a new black arts movement, challenging ideas of what is music, what is classical music, what do we see as instruments. We completely redefined that. Nobody before hip hop would have looked at two turntables, a mixer, and a microphone and said that those were real musical instruments. We changed that. In fact, people like Dougie Fresh and a brother named Eminem from Harlem even used their throats, their mouth, as percussion, as what we call beatbox, as an instrument. Before us, that wasn't seen that way. We got graffiti going, we got fashion, we got slang, we got all types of the dance. Huh? All this is part of a hip hop culture. And this woman is sitting in a school, working in a school right dab in the community that produced that, and got the nerve to talk about, I don't want my teachers teaching Black history. So we had a few teachers complaining. We got in touch with them. We interviewed them, and we called people out. We had original Black Panther Party members there. Harlem Liberation School was there. We had a few different groups out. I think Why Accountability came out, and we had protests. And guess what happened? After this was all up in the newspaper, how the principal had snatched this art project from this little sister and sent her home crying. Had talked badly about our sister. I can't remember her name. She was a fair-skinned sister, a former Cotton Club, Lena Horne. This young lady in this school had done a beautiful picture of Lena Horne. The principal snatched it and then snatched it from her, ripped it. And that got in the paper. And guess what? The family of Lena Horne read that paper and was incensed and wrote a letter to the Board of Ed about it. We had people writing letters and calling in. Next thing you know, that principal was gone from that school. That's an act of resistance. Right? Okay. When they were trying to extradite our sister Assata Shakur, this would have been back in the I want to say maybe around 2010, 11, or 12, somewhere around there. They were trying to extradite her back to New Jersey from Cuba. And we had a whole petition going around saying, leave our sister alone, hands off Assata Shakur. Every court case that she was involved in proved conclusively she could not have shot and killed the state trooper as she was falsely accused of having done. That's an act of resistance. When Dhoruba bin Wahab, when it comes out, he has 4th stage cancer, and he's one of our great heroes, 19-year political prisoner, New York City Black Panther Party leader, co-founder of the Black Liberation Army, and now he's suffering with 4th stage cancer. We find out, this is Harlem Liberation School, we start a GoFundMe. We raised $10,000+ for Baba so that he can have money for his medical expenses and some money for transportation between New York and Africa, where he gets his treatment and where he partially lives. That is an act of political resistance. Philanthropy is an act of resistance. Why? Because this is somebody that the government hated so much they falsely charged him and had him locked away for 19 years and wanted to lock him away for life. Right? This is somebody they targeted as part of their COINTELPRO and wanted to eliminate and destroy. So when you now come and say, we want to support him, somebody that the government wants to destroy, that's an act of resistance, because the government wants us to define our heroes and shows the way they do. That's why when we say we are not going to what is this white man called? Christopher Columbus. You know, when they had in New York, they have Christopher Columbus Day Parade. And when black people say, I'm not participating in that parade, when black parents say, my kids ain't going to school on that day. Or when people say, we're going to change the name of that day from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Those are all acts of resistance. When Stevie Wonder writes and performs his beautiful song, you haven't done nothing, a song really talking about President Nixon's administration, right? And his song, you haven't done nothing. You talking all that, you gonna do ABC, you haven't done nothing. That is an act of resistance. When those brothers, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, won the sprint in the 1968 Olympics, I believe it was in Mexico or New Mexico, and they put up those black power fists. They got on the podium. One won the gold, the other won the silver. They put their black fists up with black gloves, their heads down, and took that iconic picture. That's black resistance. Boycotting is black resistance. The Montgomery bus boycott. Why? They wanted to take black people's money and not allow us to sit where we wanted to sit. Sometimes take your money and drive right off. They wanted us to comply with that, to be comfortable getting routinely disrespected and taking our money. And black people said, hell no. And so black people didn't ride their buses for more than an entire year, family, depriving that bus company of their money and this collaboration. We're not cooperating with those who seek to enslave and exploit us. That was an act of resistance, right? When people are coming up in these different jobs and they wearing cornrows and bantu knots and afros and locks, those, if the person is doing it intentionally, those are acts of resistance. It's saying, we know how you want us to come in here. We're not doing that. We're going to wear hairstyles that reflect our cultural prerogative. So the point here, family, is one, to understand what resistance means. Failure to comply, failure to cooperate, failure to allow people to continually exploit you. And, very soon, tomorrow, I'm going to be on a show, Brother Rollo's show, The Facts Project, 10 a.m. tomorrow. And we're going to be talking, and I'm going to be going in, family. It's going to probably make a few people upset, and that's okay. We're going to be talking about this thing with Fat Joe and with the Puerto Ricans and hip hop, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that because at the end of the day, when you tell the truth in a world built on falsehood and lies, that is an act of resistance. So you see how I gave you 10, 15, 20 different ways to resist. There is no such thing as one way. When we came up, they used to say there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? That's what we're talking about. There are several ways we can resist what we feel is dishonesty, exploitation, negative narratives. When that Black Panther movie came out, and they're showing black people running government, looking beautiful and strong, having this precious mineral, which gave them technological superiority over the entire world. That's an act of resistance. So it's important you be able to identify these different forms of resistance so you know it when you see it. And so you don't feel pigeonholed into thinking, oh, I gotta protest to be resistant. That's just one form. And I'm not going to tell you all the protests I and my colleagues and comrades have been in. When they was trying to demolish the Audubon Ballroom where Brother Malcolm was assassinated, and Columbia University or Columbia Presbyterian Hospital wanted to demolish it and make it their own. I was at some of those protests when the cops killed a grandmother, Eleanor Bumpers. We at those protests. Yeah, family. Bensonhurst, when they killed Michael Stewart, possibly rather. Protest is a form of resistance. But guess what? When you get tired of your kids going to their schools and they can't read and write proficiently, they can't look at a clock unless it's digital and tell the time, they can't sign their own name, and you say, man, I had enough of this. I'm taking my kid out of there. I'm going to homeschool my kid. I'm going to start a community homeschool. I'm going to start an African-centered school. I'm going to put my kid in that African-centered school. Guess what that's called, family? Those are acts of resistance. Yeah. So it's important you be able to identify these different things that are acts of resistance. When somebody's trying to tell you about a certain athlete, actor, whoever, that is good to our community, supportive of our community, and they're trying to tell you everything wrong with them, bad, pull them down, and you know those are lies, and you stand up and fight for them, that's an act of resistance. When you start a philanthropy, a charitable organization, and you identify Black organizations doing wonderful work to help our people, and they're under-resourced, underfunded, under-supported, and you say, we're going to raise money, and we're going to send our money to this African Center school, to that political education center, to that Black hospital or medical clinic, to that Black legal firm that helps Black people, those are acts of resistance. So, fam, I'm going to leave you with that. I'm not going to overstate the point. I think I made the point clear. I'm going to now go see if we have any comments, questions, anything like that. Okay. Yes, is the Queen Bee. When we refuse to remain silent or backwards or reactionary. The Queen also says, which is very important, when we recognize our own beauty, that speaks to what I was saying about the hairstyles, right? And looking at people that are maybe darker complected and seeing their beauty. Yes, that's very important. To make sure that we're not turning our backs on our people. Tell them, Queen. That's right. That's right. You see? Rising Phoenix says we had to learn slave songs in school. Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, and Wade in the Water, amongst others. Right? Now, remember, some of those songs were acts of resistance. Right? Swing Low, Sweet Chariot was a song that had in it a coded message that we're running away, that Harriet Tubman or one of our agents of the Underground Railroad is coming to your town and we're going to be bouncing, so get ready. So some of those songs were acts of resistance. Absolutely. If you was part of the Underground Railroad and you're leading people away from enslavement or slave territories to so-called free territories, running away is an act of resistance. That's absolutely right, exact. All right. So in a country that's capitalist and they want everybody's out for profit, out for self, charge what you want, price gouging, and here you go opening up a cooperative supermarket where 200 Black people in the community have ownership in it and all benefit equally, and you're able to hire people from your families and your communities in this cooperatively owned supermarket, and you're able to buy in bulk and therefore give the advantage of deep discounts to your people. That's an act of resistance, family. So I just want to make sure that we're very clear, because if it's up to me, we all need to participate in acts of resistance, and we can do it in our own way. And don't let nobody tell you, you're the best judge of what you're prepared to do. Everybody's not built to go around here taking over buildings and challenging the cops. No problem. Some people are going to do it by teaching our families, teaching our kids as an activist, teach them where they come from, how beautiful they are. That if they commit and they're dedicated, right, then and they form team and know how to organize, they can get all types of things done. All of those are acts of resistance. So don't think the act of resistance is the big, mega thing that you see on TV. Acts of resistance can be as quiet as saying, I'm going to change my name. I'm going to make sure that any family member that comes from me has an African name. It could be, I'm going to go to worship. I'm going to have an African cosmology. I'm going to check out what Yoruba is offering. I'm going to check out what Mayat is all about from ancient Kemet. Or, as Rising Phoenix says, even supporting a black church to me is resistance, especially depending on what that church is kicking to the community. So you might go to a church and they got cooperatives, they got black bookstore in there, they got political education. My church, Convent Avenue Baptist Church, around the time I would have been in high school going off to college, do you know that on Wednesday nights, family, in the church, they had the likes of Dr. Ben and Dr. John Henry Clark teaching Black history right in the sanctuary of the church. So if you got a church like that, and they're funding people to go to school, they got food pantries, they got bookstores, more than just religious books. They got political books and cultural books teaching our history, right? Coming out, making political statements, boycotting, and family. Yeah, all of that, all of those things are part of the resistance. Now, remember, the things we do that mimic and support those who are our adversaries, by definition, are not acts of resistance. To be an act of resistance, it has to go against what your oppressor is messaging, supporting, promoting, or doing, or trying to accomplish. It has to be a failure to comply, right? So, family, I just want to thank you all, Rising Phoenix. Thank you for being so active in the thread there. To my beautiful, lovely queen, Brenda, thank you for all you do for me and the home, and for our organization and the channel. And those of you watching who may not have put too many participated, let's say, in the comments, that's cool. That's all right. Thank you for checking us out. And family, I'm always going to just say, please remember, we need your support. Please remember to subscribe, share, and like the video. Once again, today we're talking about Black resistance. It occurs in many ways and on many battlefields. Thank you, family, for listening and watching. Love y'all. And we'll be back soon talking about this hip-hop question and Fat Joe and the controversy. Peace and Black Power, family. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.